Sir, it's 3, 2, 1.
Hello, good afternoon to dear delegates and doctor. I welcome to all of you in today's session. So our today's speaker are Dr. Sandeep Suri and Dr. Aman Mehta. They will discuss on topic of diabetes and its reflection on mental health. So our first speaker is Dr. Sandeep Suri. He has completed MBBS MD, FIDM, and currently he is working in Holy Health Hospital, Hisar, as a diabetologist. And doctor is life member of DFSCI, RSSDI, DPSI, and DDF. And our another speaker is Dr. Aman Mehta. He is completed MBBS MD. So doctor is a neuropsychiatrist and a physiotherapist in Mehta Holy Hospital, Hisar. So doctor is formerly at Institute of Human Behavior and Allied Sciences, IHBS, New Delhi. So without wasting, I would like to hand over this session to Dr. Sandeep Suri. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So, good evening, friends. At the outset, I must thank Lupin for arranging today's web meet and giving me an opportunity to interact with my fellow colleagues on a very pertinent, very important topic, which we are dealing day in and day out. It is diabetes and mental health. Friends, I will be sharing my practical experience and also how to look for mental health issues in our patients with diabetes, so as to take proper help, timely help by referring and also by doing proper management by a psychiatrist friend. So, if you look at diabetes and mental health, these two issues are intimately linked. They are so intermingled with each other that you cannot separate them out. So they are intimately linked, and it is not wrong if we call them both diabetes and mental health issues as a multi-system disorder. So diabetes involves each and every system of your body. Similarly, mental health is also a multi-system disorder. It is not only the brain, or it is not only the thinking that is involved, or coping skills are involved. It is the multi-system disorder. So both these two are multi-system disorders. And that diabetes, it doesn't only involve your physical health. It is only 50%, which you see when you look at only physical health. But 50% is there in the patient's mind. That is, a mental health is involved in 50% of the time. So living with diabetes has a huge impact on emotional health. You all know that. And also the management of diabetes is multifactorial, multifaceted, and it includes both non-pharmacological management and also pharmacological treatment. Non-pharmacological treatment, you all know that there is a dietary issues, then there is a physical activity is involved, tobacco cessations, alcohol cut down has to be there, proper medication has to be there. So they are non-pharmacological. So it requires definite discipline and also commitment from patients. And we know that, but to follow these advice and only and acceptance is there in only 25% of these patients. So most of these patients, they either don't comply them or they don't understand them. So there is a huge impact of emotional health that plays a great role in management of diabetes. So there are if you next slide, it's moving like this. Yes. So people with diabetes are twice likely to suffer from depression. We will talk about depression a few minutes later. Affects the duration of depressive mode and leads to recurrent depressive episodes. So these are there. We will discuss about depression in a few minutes. But various psychological conditions are linked with depression, with diabetes. So there is a diabetes distress. And what is diabetes distress? This is you can say it's an emotional response which is characterized by extreme apprehension, discomfort, or dejection due to perceived inability to cope with the challenges and demands of the living with diabetes. So patients suffer a lot many coping deficiencies, and they feel they are unable to take care of their diabetes. So it is very frequent. 40% of type 1 diabetic patient and 45% of type 2 diabetic patient, They experience significant diabetes distress at any given time. Now, there are other emotional disturbances that can be there. There can be fear of injections. There can be fear of hypoglycemias. There can be eating disorders, and eating disorders are very frequent. They are very common. There can be anorexia nervosa or bulimia nervosa or binge eating disorder. It is again very common. Night eating disorder, where patient takes more than 25% of their calories after taking dinner by unhealthy snacking, is again a very common problem. Then sometime you pressurize a lot for having healthy food and healthy diet. Then there is a term that is known as orthorexia. That means obsessive about eating healthy. So these are all coming into eating disorder. Then there is anxiety. Then there is a depression associated. Adjusting to life with diabetes is a big challenge in most of our patients. So there is poor emotional, psychological well-being, and it is not only the mental health which is involved, but it leads to poorer quality of life, poorer management of diabetes, increasing cost of treatment due to associated increasing amount of comorbidities and complications. Increase in cost of these treating complications goes very high. So what we should aim? We should aim for holistic care. What do we mean by this holistic care? So if you look at the clinical impact of this diabetes distress, it is emotional and psychological well-being that is lost. So what do you mean this holistic care? Basically, if you treat diabetes, we look at four major targets. We'll always try to look at four. We are focused on four major targets. Number one is glucometabolic control. We always focus on A1C, focus on fasting plasma glucose, focusing on postprandial glycemia. Glycemic variability should go down. Hypoglycemia risk should go down. This is glucometabolic path. Second is viscerometabolic path. We focus on decreasing weight. Also, we try to focus on decreasing visceral adiposity. Then we'll focus on vasculometabolic path. That is, we try to decrease cardiovascular events. Atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease has to be cut down, and also renal events should come down. So that is a vasculometabolic pathway. Fourth thing is barometabolic. That is, we try to control blood pressure and also try to manage dyslipidemia. So most of us are focusing on four important parts: glucometabolic, viscerometabolic, vasculometabolic, and barometabolic. But I think if we ignore psychometabolic path, if you are forgetting psychometabolic path, we are going to lose a big battle. So psychometabolic factors are often forgotten. They are very frequent. Around 45 to 50% of our patients have got these type of issues. They are forgotten, frequent, and associated with comorbidities. And if you want to aim for holistic care, they should be part of your pathways. It should be part of your treatment paradigm. We all know that diabetes self-management program, or it's education programs, or we try to educate our patient. They are always demanding and complex. And the activities included are monitoring of blood glucose, self-monitoring of blood glucose, self-injections or injecting insulins by caregivers, and also taking oral medication at a proper time so that there can be no mismatch between oral medication. There should not be any mismatch between insulin and the meals. Also regular physical activities, healthy eating, comprehensive understanding of diabetes, and healthy coping skills and problem solving and risk reduction. So it has behavioral, psychological, social impact, and demands high level of self-efficacy, resilience, and perceived control and empowerment. So it is a highly demanding and complex issues if you want to impart diabetes self-management education. Because without diabetes education, without self-monitoring, without self-injecting, patient's initiative has to be there in around 50 to 60% of the time. I always tell my patient the treatment of diabetes is 40% on my behalf, but 60% you have to push for that. So without their involvement, without their taking control of their disease by themselves, the things are not going to move on. So how to identify diabetic distress? So diabetic distress, I told you the definition. It is an emotional response characterized by extreme apprehension and discomfort, dejection, or one line you can define it that there is a markedly decreased coping skills related to diabetes management. So patient is unable to cope with the demanding effects of diabetes management. Now there are 7 A's which you can remember it. I am going to give you so many mnemonics or acronyms can be there. So you can just write down there. There is 7 A's which are there, and first 3 are to diagnose diabetes distress. Number 1 is awareness should be there with a physician, treating healthcare physician. Healthcare physician should be knowing that there is an entity that is diabetic distress is there. You should ask about these things. Pertinent questions should be asked about that, and you should assess the level of this distress. Then after getting the things under diagnosis, that you diagnose a case that has got diabetic distress in them, you advise, you assist, you arrange, and you assign. And number 1 thing to be known that to ask open-ended questions. So this should be a motivational interviewing. Otherwise, if closed interview, if you are going to do close-ended interviews, so things the results will be very dismal. So there is a 7 model approach. So it is so one thing has to be remembered, that diabetes distress is not considered as a separate complication. You don't consider that your patient, one patient is having diabetes, he is not having diabetic distress plus or minus. It is not like that. It is not a separate complication, and it is thought to be living with diabetes. So it is always there. Sometime it is manifested and sometime it is occult. So at the same time, coping mechanisms are integral part of life. So it's a life with diabetes where the coping issues are involved, and it exists in everyone. So you have to, it is not like retinopathy, it is not like nephropathy, neuropathy. 40%, 30% patient will be having these complications, other will not be having. But diabetes distress is one entity that will be there depending upon the amount of percentage which is there. So the patients can be having different phenotype, or psychophenotypes can be different, but diabetic distress is always there in most of our patients with diabetes. So a psychometric assessment of each and every patient with the coping skills can predict diabetes distress as a present and even future vulnerability. So suppose your patient is not having distress at present time, and it is not and it is you can say it is easily, patient is able easily following your advice, but they can creep up at any time. Anytime you change the therapy, anytime you change the treatment paradigm, suppose you initiate insulin, suppose you declare some complications, so suppose you say that your patient now you are having some retinopathy issue, nephropathy issue, so there at that time this distress can come up. So if you have a patient who is vulnerable for diabetes distress, at present is not having this, can have that distress at any time during the journey of diabetes. So coping skill assessment is suggested and is as a primary investigation for diabetic distress prevention and treatment. We have many questionnaires how we should proceed for assessing coping skill, but these are not made specifically for use in people with diabetes. There is diabetes distress scoring system, then there is a PAID, that is patient attitude of issues related to diabetes distress. PAID system is there, PAID scoring system, PAID scoring system, or DDS scoring system is there. But what do I use? I use a very practical tool that is known as glucocopper. I will show them that there is a glucocopper paper, that is a tool that we use in our hospital. It includes 6 items. There are 6 items that is there with us. That is a glucocopper. This is a tool which we use. There are 6 items. There are 2 items are on negative side. They are basically 6 items. 2 are on negative side. 1 item is negativity. Second item is blaming. So these 2 are a negative side. Then there are 4 positive sides. One is acceptance, then optimism, then there is planning, and then there is action. So these 4 are basically positive items. And there is a scaling system, just like a thermometer. You can have a scaling system from 1 to 10. you scale them, that how much, and then we calculate the total score. So it's just like a thermometer like scoring system, which is very easy to be used and very well validated. And we have seen in our trials, and the people, those who have validated, they are also from Haryana. Dr. Sanjay Kalra, he's a diabetologist, he's an endocrinologist, and he is a president of Indian Society of Endocrinology. He is from Karnal, and he has validated this tool. He has devised this tool, and we are using this tool for last 2 years, and it has been validated that there is a increased diabetes distress as per this glucocopper scoring system. It is related, it is validated, increased with increasing fasting plasma glucose, increasing postprandial glycemia, increasing A1C level. So we give a glucocopper at first contact and then at regular interval, usually on the day of A1C. Most of the time A1C is done at HbA1c is done at 3 to 4 monthly interval. So glucocopper we try to include this in that curriculum also. Or we are changing some treatment, like you are putting patient on insulin, and or there is some major distress or major stress in the family, loss or demise somewhere in the family, or change in life pattern is there. So there, this tool comes to your help. So now by diagnosing it, the things become very easy. Now how to manage it? Then again, there are 4 pillars of management. 4 A's are basically arrange, assist, advise, and assign. So these 4 pillars are basically, if you divide them, how we approach. Number 1 is strengthening the self-care skills. The self-care, diabetes self-management education which we have imparted in our patients, you have to strengthen them. Like diet has to be strengthened, physical activity has to be increased, self-administration of oral anti-diabetic drug or insulin has to be increased, or you have to strengthen it. SMBG, self-monitoring of blood glucose. So strengthening of self-care skill is very important. Second is optimize coping skill. Those coping skills which are not with the patient is blaming something, patient is having negativity. So you have to optimize those coping skill by acceptance, optimizing, planning, and then we take care of some action. Now sometimes we do some intervention, like insulin has been started. So minimize the discomfort associated with the change. We never give it in a single bolus. Like we don't give all type of education related to insulinization, because insulinization insulin initiation requires type of insulin, device advice, then site injection, where to be injected. Then it also requires how to take care of hypoglycemia, then also requires self-monitoring of blood glucose. So many things are involved in insulinization. It is not a single time job. So we break the change into discrete bits. Sometimes we tell only insulin techniques, insulin dosing and device, and then some amount of hypoglycemia awareness has to be given. So also you have to prioritize the action of change. Suppose patient is vulnerable for hypoglycemia, you tell about hypoglycemia on a first visit also. And then we focus on essential events, essential issues. So this is the minimizing discomfort associated with the change. Then again, it is important that you have to take support from your whole team. It is not a single person job. It is not, I am not sitting in my chamber and doing all type of jobs by my own. Never possible. You have to take support from your dietitian. You have to take support from your psychologist. You have to take support from your diabetes educator, family members, caregivers. Also, community has to be taken into consideration. Then physiotherapist can also play a big role in this diabetes distress management. Now I will. So it is a common diabetes is very common. You can say 1 in 4 and 1 in 5 in type 2 and 1 in 4 in type 1. But how to do these type of job? How to take care of? We say that it is an open-ended, or what type of communication we should do in our what type of communication skills we should try to, or how to converse with the patient. So the key is conversation and communication. If we have limited time in our OPD, that way most of the time we even don't look at the patient. don't see, there is no eye to eye contact with the patient. And that's how I always say our seniors in my hospital and also surrounding hospitals, they have got so much a big clientage or attachment with the patient that they know the family of the patient. They know what were the issues related to their family. They know the patient by their name, and also they have become the family member, and patient try to share so many things, not only the physical ailment, but also psychological support is being given by our seniors. So that's where we younger doctors are lacking. We don't have that communication skills because there is no teaching in our curriculum, in our post graduation or undergraduation, how to communicate with the patient. And these type of issues which are coming up in each and every day in the market, or you can say there people are anti doctors, or there is some society which is against us, is only due to these conversation and communication skills which we are lacking. The word is empathetic communication. It should be absolutely empathetic communication. The language healthcare professionals use affects the person's willingness to talk regarding the challenges of the living with diabetes. So the language which you are using, it should be warm, it should be very receptive, and it should be a motivational type of interviewing, making patient self-confidence. And you want to impart self-management skills in your patient, so you have to build the confidence of the patient, and ultimately you will get good diabetes outcomes. So I told you the key to conversation, key is to converse with the patient and communication, and these can be clubbed as a diabetes therapy by ear. This is again a very good term which we use, and 4 or 5 years back we had an article that was published again by Sanjay Kalra, and few of us were the part of that. That is diabetes therapy by ear. That means you listen to the patient, and there is an empathetic communication, and confidence building is the key. You listen to the patient, you counsel the patient, and filter the unnecessary, potentially harmful messages, and impart positive impact, impart positive knowledge to the patient. So it is diabetes therapy by ear. So what are the outcomes of open empathetic communication that has to be there? So remember by acronym of 5I. So there is a whole table you remember by acronym. I gave you an acronym of 7 A's. Now there is an acronym of 5I strategies. Initiate discussion, number 1. Then identify the degree and source of diabetes distress. Where is the issue is lying? Then inform. Inform means you inform regarding meaning of what you mean by meaning of diabetes distress. Then incorporate healthy coping skill in your patient. That this is the 4th I. Then the 5th I is improve quality of diabetes care and support system. So this is the benefit of open-ended questions or empathetic questions, empathetic communication. But if you are using closed direct communication, there is a one result that comes: the patient is not going to come to you. You are going to lose your patient. Patient will be going away from you because there is a gross misunderstanding. What patient? There is a no frequency mismatch between you and your patient. So ABCs of effective communication is active listening. We don't have time, but if you are able to, if you want to have a good diabetes practice, active listening is very important. Your body language should be receptive. Observe non-verbal communication, eye-to-eye contact with a positive vibration. They are very important. Clarify information and paraphrases. Develop rapport with the patient. You must know what are the issues. You are advising some diet, then patient has got dental issue, patient is not able to cook food for himself, patient has to rely on his daughter-in-law for the food. So these are the issues. So you have to develop rapport. There is nobody for injections. Patient requires insulinization, and there is nobody for injections at a proper time for that patient in the family. Then you have to take care of you have to advise, look for the caregivers, and also even the neighbors or community support has to be there. Helps in support self-management efforts. Explain clearly using simple words with the help of diagrams and pictures and models. Feedback giving clear signals, set up the proper realistic expectations, and conclusion, at the end of consultation, summarize the issues and carrying out the plan. This is very important कि मैंने आपको क्या बताया है खाने के बारे में, इंसुलिन के बारे में, आपकी डिजीज के बारे में. This has to be summarized in 2 or 3 points. So, and everything has to be done in a empathetic communication way. So, as a healthcare professional, we have a responsibility. We have to develop appropriate communication strategies to meet the demands and needs of all members of the community. So it's a really a profession which has got lot more responsibility. So so what I say that most of us, how we follow, how we take care of these we become responsible. There is another acronym that is CARES. So there was 7 A's, there was 5 I, and now it is CARES, CARES. So there is another beautiful acronym that is C is for confident and competence. You should build your competence for management of diabetes. You should be updated and you should be confident what you are doing. Second, A is for authentic and accessible. You should be authentic in your approach and you should be accessible to the patient also. C is reciprocal respect. What you are saying to your patient, you must have a reciprocal. He is a human being. He is a soul in itself. So you have to be respectful for that soul also. You should be empathetic for that soul. Then it should be straightforward. That is CARE. Then S is straightforward. Simplicity is important. So this is how you can become a responsible person and responsible caregiver for that patient. Now, for practical, for what practical time, sometimes it is not always required, but there are 4 critical times for diabetes self-management education and support services where it is required. You know, there is monitoring, there is problem solving, there is taking medication, taking insulin, healthy coping, being active. So they are all important as a diabetes education part. Now, how to impart, number 1 is at the time of diagnosis. It's the most important. You have to assess your patient, diagnose that there is any related issue with the diagnosis, giving diagnosis of diabetes to this patient. Then you have to, when there is some complication develops, retinopathy, nephropathy, or some coronary event has occurred, then again you have to be on that. You have to take guard against this diabetes distress. Then annually, or when not meeting treatment targets, then again you have to look for the self-management education, plus you have to take care of this distress part. Then 4th is when transition in life, some age changing, approaching adolescent, getting adult, or going towards perimenopausal, postmenopausal, or elderly patients, for transition zones of life cycle has to be also in target for the education programs. So I will, this is how we take care of this diabetes distress. I will go with another important topic, that is this is with the insulin relation, which is very common, and many times which people ask me how to impart insulinization, how to go with insulin therapy, and people say that आपके पास तो डॉक्टर साहब इंसुलिन बड़ी जल्दी ले लेता है, हमारे पास पेशेंट इंसुलिन को रिफ्यूज करता है. So this is psychological barriers to insulin use. It includes negative thoughts or feelings that people with diabetes might have while starting, using, and intensifying the dose of insulin. So this is known as psychological barrier, or you can say that it is an insulin distress syndrome also. So it is, again, it is a part of diabetes related distress, but this is a separate entity, because diabetes related distress is a continuous throughout the life once your patient is diagnosed as a case of diabetes. But insulin distress is momentarily part. It is a part and parcel of diabetes distress, but it is a short-lived story. So it is associated with delay, reduction, or discontinuation of insulin usage. So clinicians should emphasize needing insulin does not indicate they have failed. So it is a very important part that it should not be taken as a failure on the part of the patient. So it should not be as a punishment to the patient that you have failed in your management diabetes. Now I am giving you these breaks. Every individual will have different concerns. Ask and address the concerns rather making assumptions. ये तो लेना ही नहीं चाहता, ये तो इसको advice को मानेगा नहीं. He has got no faith in my advice. He is challenging my advice. So this type of attitude should not be there from your mind, from yourself, once you are prescribing insulin to your patient. So what are the psychological barriers in insulin use? Also known as psychological insulin resistance. You know there is a metabolic insulin resistance, but maximum insulin resistance is there in your brain. So there is a psychological insulin resistance or a negative appraisal of insulin. Various concerns are there. Concerns about the medication. कौन सा इंसुलिन लगाना है, कितना लगाना है, डॉक्टर साहब ये तो बहुत मुश्किल है. इफेक्टिवनेस एंड डिपेंडेंस ऑन इंसुलिन. अगर मुझे एक बार इंसुलिन स्टार्ट हो गया, पूरा जिंदगी मेरे को इंसुलिन लेना पड़ेगा. एंजाइटीज अबाउट इंजेक्शन. डॉक्टर साहब ये कैसे लगेगा, ये तो मेरी पूरी लाइफ खराब कर देगा, मेरा आना जाना बाहर, मेरे को तो बहुत काम करने पड़ते हैं. देयर इज नोबडी टू टेक केयर ऑफ मी. लैक ऑफ कॉन्फिडेंस, स्किल्स, इम्पैक्ट ऑन सेल्स एंड परसेप्शन एंड लाइफ. मेरे जो काम करने का ढंग है वो तो उसमें तो इंसुलिन फिट ही नहीं होता. Fears about diabetes progression. मेरा डायबिटीज इतना बढ़ गया कि मेरे को इंसुलिन की जरूरत पड़ गई डॉक्टर साहब. Insulin is as a sign of diabetes is getting worse. So these are very important and pertinent questions which are there in your patient's mind. So insulin distress is the term. First time once you put patient on, you ask your patient to have insulin, it's an emotional response to suggestion of use of insulin in a patient with diabetes characterized by extreme apprehension, discomfort, dejection or denial due to perceived inability to cope with the requirement of insulin treatment. So in a way, it is an diabetes distress manifested as insulin distress. So there is always a feeling of guilt in the patient, failure in managing diabetes, end of life is there once there is insulinization. Negative social perception is there that my neighbor or my elderly person in the family was put on insulin and we lost him within next 2 to 3 months. And the neighbor started on insulin, he lost his eyes, he lost his feet, or some kidneys were damaged due to insulin. So there are negative social propaganda also against insulin. Then very well valid issues regarding hypoglycemias, nocturnal hypoglycemias, they are there in patient's mind. Worsening of eye kidney complications are always there in patient mind once. So these are the things which make psychological barriers to insulin uses. So in our country, if you see what is the impact of this psychological barrier to insulin use, it is, forget about that glycemia is uncontrolled and there can be multiple complications can be there. That is a different story. That is a pathway of diabetes worsening if you don't start insulin. But in our country, this is the most common cause of change in physicians by the patient with diabetes. So this is the most common cause of shift of the patient. मैंने आज इंसुलिन लिखा, पेशेंट कहेगा डॉक्टर साहब ये तो काम, डॉक्टर के ये तो काम खराब है, ये तो मेरे को इंसुलिन लिख दिया. He will change from me, he will go away from me to other doctor. So this is a sometime we try to have an unsigned pact between patient and insulin. Unsigned pact is that I will not write insulin and you will stay with me. And the patient says, this is unsigned pact, you don't write insulin, I will keep on coming to you, whatever may be the glycemic control. Not bothering about how much is the A1C value. So this is a sort of unsigned pact between, but I think it has to be changed. So how I approach, how can a clinician support person to person with psychological barrier to insulin use? Acknowledge the specific barrier. You must target about why you are not wanting insulin, why it is so, where are the phobias, where is the hindrance. Reassure them it is a temporary therapy. You may not, if you control your glycemia, I may stop it within 2 to 3 months after getting proper glycemic control. In 50% of patients, we even remove insulin. We de-escalate the therapy. Sometimes twice a daily insulin has to be converted into once a day basal insulin, or sometimes you have to decrease the dose. Again, you have to reassure them it is not lifelong. And if you delay it, and it can be lifelong also. 50% of patients can be removed from insulin by virtue of newer and newer medications also. Advising insulin is needed as a part of natural progression of diabetes. So it is a journey of diabetes where different stations are coming. So one station you may have insulin, and advising insulin use may begin with just 1 or 2 injections for a day. It is not always a basal bolus therapy 4 times a injection. So decision balancing is a technique used in motivational interviewing to build rapport, and I will tell you what the tool we are using. I use one term also. वो always say कि देसी दवाइयां ले लेते हैं, natural दवाई ले लेते हैं diabetes management के लिए. Insulin is the most natural therapy of diabetes. You have to tell your patient that it is the most natural therapy of diabetes. How? It is human insulin from human source and for use in human. So this is the most natural therapy. So many people will say, okay, doctor, मैं क्या देखो क्या लिखा है? This is human insulin. So this is how, and also teach your patient in a very empathetic way. So what technique I use, it is an insulin fulcrum. So there is a fulcrum that on x-axis you plot, on horizontal axis you plot insulin urgency, and on y-axis you write down insulin distress. Suppose you have got 3 type of patient. One patient is having low insulin urgency. There is no urgency. Patient has got high glycemia, but he is not in a catabolic state. He is not having diabetic ketoacidosis. He is not having any sepsis or any infection. He is not in ICU. He is not admitted in your hospital. So he's an outgoing patient, outpatient department patient requiring insulin. Okay, fine. With HbA1c value of higher around 9%, he is on oral anti-diabetic drug, but absolutely asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic, but lot much amount of distress, insulin distress is there. So need urgency is on lower side, but distress is on very high side. So here you have to take care of the distress first. You have to mitigate the distress first, and then insulinization is required. If you say that I am writing insulin, and if you don't want to have insulin for yourself, then don't come to me again. He will never come to you again. Okay, so this type of patient you have to mitigate insulin distress. Second type of patient have both things. There is some sort of urgency, and there is moderate amount of insulin distress. So here you have to take care of both things. You have to advise, you have to take care of insulin distress, you have to educate your patient, and you have to teach, you have to give injection in front of you so that the pain, phobias, show the needle, show the device, and take care of the also help of the family member, caregivers. Also, you can have you can say that you can have help from other OPD patients who are sitting in the waiting hall, which are also using insulin. And I call them insulin coaches. They are basically my insulin coach. Many times I ask some type 1 diabetic patient who is अंदर आ जाओ और इनको बताओ कि इंसुलिन कितना लगाते हैं, कैसे लगाते हैं, एक बार इनको टीच करो इंसुलिन से क्या दिक्कत है. He will say I am taking insulin for last 10 to 15 years. Okay, then the things are now diluted. So insulin distress goes away by taking care of these type of things. Then there are certain patients who are having high insulin urgency. There is high insulin need. That is, patient is having catabolic symptom, patient is having diabetic ketoacidosis, patient is in ICUs, patient in sepsis. So here, whatever may be the distress, you have to start insulinization. This is the type, and take care of the distress as the journey goes on. So this is how I approach insulinization in my patients. So I will stop here. Dr. Aman will be dealing with other topic issues related to depressions and anxiety, and we will have question answer session at the end of the talk.
So thank you, sir. So I would like to hand over the session to Dr. Aman Mehta.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Lipin. Thank you, sir, for inviting me for this webinar. Sir has expressed a lot of issues which people with diabetes have been facing, and he has also shared his clinical experience for the last few years. And I'll be trying to share the impact of diabetes on mental health and I'll be sharing my experiences with regard to patients. Yeah. So as all of us know that mental health affects every one of us. Mental health is not mental illness. Mental health involves a health which is which helps us to cope with all kind of situations or all kind of difficulties. So it includes our emotional health, psychological health, and social well-being. So mental health, if it is affected, it leads to mental illness. So there are two different sorts of mental illnesses. One are neurotic illnesses and one are psychotic illnesses. And there are other sorts of problems like substance use, addictions, and sexual health issues. So diabetes has its impact on all spheres of mental illnesses. These neurotic illnesses, what I said for the first, are illnesses like anxiety, depression, adjustment issues, relationship issues. Uh, Another is the psychotic illnesses. Psychotic illnesses involves illnesses like of mood disorders, bipolar disorders, and psychotic illnesses like schizophrenia, in which the person is not in touch with the reality. So these patients are also always at risk of diabetes, and so it is always essential from the point of view of a physician as well as a point of a view from a psychiatrist that uh, his baseline assessment should be done whenever such kind of patients come to our OPDs for consultations. So some of the early warning signs for any one of us, for any of the clinician whosoever deals with treating patients. So there are times when patients tend to reach a general physician, reach a general surgeon, a gynecologist, that we find that there are some warning signs. Like we see there is change in biorhythm. Biorhythm involves basically the change in the sleep, appetite, and there are other changes like change in other habits like interacting with others, uh, getting upset, getting angry more than the usual. Whenever we find anybody with such kind of changes, it is always advisable to reach to a mental health professional, and especially these changes are seen in diabetics. So sir has also shared with us regarding diabetes distress, and some of the issues I would raise will be raising is diabetes and depression. So like sir also expressed and shared with us that diabetic distress is an emotional reaction of an individual. So if an emotional reaction of an individual lasts for a longer time, so the duration, if the duration of that emotional reaction is more than 2 weeks and it is affecting the person's life, if it is affecting the person's personal and professional life, uh, and it is also involving his other activities like same the biorhythm, and like if he's also losing interest in his regular activities or in his hobbies, so definitely the patient might be suffering from depression. So some of the complaints that patients often express are fatigability, inability to concentrate, hopelessness, helplessness, worthlessness, death wishes, and even suicidal ideas at times. So here we see that diabetes and depression are interrelated. So at times we have seen that uh, it might be that diabetes might be leading to depression, or it might be that depression leading to diabetes. But at the same time, they can also be comorbid conditions, so which require independent assessment by a physician, endocrinologist, or a psychiatrist too. So here, like this infographic is showing us, like uh, we see that there are some of the symptoms like lethargy, lack of motivation, extreme mood swings, low energy, indecisiveness in people, which leads to lack of social interaction, lack of exercise, and other unhealthy habits. So what is it actually leading to? This is actually leading to difficulty in managing diabetes. So it leads to poor diabetes management, and ultimately it is going to lead to early complications for the individuals. So the another important topic for us is depressive symptom in diabetes. So it becomes very difficult for a clinician to delineate whether this depressive symptom is of depression or the symptom is of diabetes. So like there are few overlapping symptoms like fatigue, disturbances in sleep, disturbance in or change in the weight, and alternate eating habits. So there can be some diabetic specific contributors because it is a chronic or a complex illness, as well as some non-diabetic specific contributors. It can be stressful life circumstances, substance use, and personal and family issues. We also see that we also know that diabetes, the prevalence of diabetes is around 2 to 3 times more in the prevalence of depression is 2 to 3 times more in diabetics. So if we see, like as all of us know that India is known to be a world leader in the number of diabetic patients. So see, if there are so many number of diabetic patients, so similarly the number of people suffering from depression because of diabetes or comorbid conditions are extremely high, which need integrated approach for assessment as well as for management. So how can a clinician identify that a person has a depressive symptom? So what is the most important thing is like Dr. Sandeep sir also said that an empathic interview is needed. So the role of a interviewer is the most essential part of any kind of assessment. So especially in such patients when it is difficult for us to assess uh, where uh, where lies the problem, it is important that we assess the patient alone with his family members and also his family members. And it is also important for us to explore what is the subjective distress of a person who is especially suffering from diabetes. And it is also important for us that we try to involve a key family member who might help in uh, in his treatment in the future days, months, or years, and it will help us in a better outcome. So the same question of depression and diabetic distress. So it is a condition. Diabetic distress is definitely a condition which is underdiagnosed or it is overdiagnosed at times, and they often tend to be comorbid conditions. So, so these were the points where we also shared with you that how can a clinician support a person with depression. So empathic interview is always the most important thing. We should always try to build a rapport with the patient so that we can come to a diagnosis and we can help him as soon as possible and we can prevent complications. As a psychiatrist and as a mental health professional, so it is our always a duty to uh, just not start pharmacotherapy. The assessment of such patients is the uh, most important thing for us to do. And we see a lot of patients have mild anxiety and depressive symptoms. For such patients, a multidisciplinary approach is the need of the hour, because for every patient who turns up to us should not be started on anxiolytics or antidepressants. Definitely, we should promote lifestyle modifications and dietary corrections, which might only help the patient to improve, and he might not be needing any kind of anxiolytics or antidepressants in his coming days. But at the same time, we should also be vigilant for people who have comorbid, moderate to severe depression. So where we feel that the person is suffering from moderate to severe depression, we should not refrain ourselves from using an antidepressant or an anxiolytic, but at the same time, whatever the decision we make for the patient, informed decision making is to be done so that we can plan actions together and the patient feels that he is being consulted to for whatever the treatment choices we are doing. Because if we don't make a planned action. So what usually happens is a lot of patients tend to fall away and they might not recover. So similarly, anxiety disorders are also affecting a lot of individuals who suffer from diabetes. So one important point to note is that a lot of times, a lot of patients turn up to us with anxiety symptoms. So it is very important for us to distinguish that the presenting complaint of the patient is because of hyperglycemia, or it is an independent anxiety symptom. Even if a person with old history of anxiety disorder presents to us, we need to always evaluate. We need to get his blood sugar done. We need to get his ECG done to come to a conclusion for this particular episode, whether it was his just anxiety or a panic attack, or it was a comorbid medical condition which was leading the person come to an emergency or into an OPD. Because a lot of time, a lot of psychiatric patients don't get adequate medical management because the family members often feel that the person might be having those anxiety symptoms and he's not improving for a long time. So similarly, in patients of anxiety, we should also, not only pharmacological treatment, we should also promote psychological treatments, which is mindfulness, breathing techniques, relaxation techniques. And in some clients who are not improving with time, we should definitely plan for cognitive behavior therapy. But the biggest challenge for patients lies in cognitive behavior therapy is that a lot of clients are not ready for these behavior therapies. So educating the client, why do we plan to go for such kind of therapies, needs to be educated to them. Similarly, as sir had told about the use of insulin. So if we try to educate the client why some kind of therapy is being planned for him or her, the continuation of therapy can take place and we might end up in helping the client. So a lot of times what we have seen is misuse of benzodiazepines. A lot of clinicians tend to advise benzodiazepines, and because of not educating the clients regarding the side effects of such medications, people tend to get dependent on these medications. And there has been extreme surge in the number of cases who come up to our OPDs who often express us that they have been taking these medications for last 5 or 10 years because nobody has told or educated to them when these medications were started, what is the use of these medications and what can be the possible side effects. I know it is very difficult in busy OPDs at times that we are not able to educate each and every client, but when we see old follow-up documents and when we see that this medication has been prescribed for a very long time, we should try to educate our staff, educate our pharmacy, as well as we should also put up infographics regarding not to use medications which have been advised by the doctor not to be used. Similarly, there are eating problems in diabetics. Like subclinical disordered eating behaviors are more common, and similarly overweight and obesity. So this is also a vicious cycle which is very common in patients of diabetes and which end up in diabetic complications. Similarly, other eating styles are emotional eating and external eating, with which a lot of patients are inclined and end up gaining their weights, and there is derangement in their lipid profiles and their HbA1c levels. So one more eating behaviors that has been observed in few patients is restrained eating. This is a method by which a lot of patients start with the aim to reduce their weight or for the weight maintenance. It is a good strategy and it is a good coping method to use such kind of strategies. But at times when it is not under the supervision of a dietitian, they end up losing these method of restrainment and end up overeating. So next thing I would like to share is regarding the role of diabetes also in dementia and cognition. Because as we see, a lot of times patients come up with deranged sugar profiles to us, and which can lead to some mild cognitive impairments and even at the onset of dementia. And diabetes itself is a early predictor for vascular dementia. The next I would share is diabetes and delirium. So as we know that delirium is also known as ICU psychosis, we see a lot of patients who come who are admitted in medical emergencies. At a lot of times when we see these patients with severe confusion and behavioral changes, on investigations, we find that there have been derangement in their blood sugar levels, or there might be change in the metabolic profile. So similarly, delirium is one condition which is often misdiagnosed or is underdiagnosed by clinicians. So definitely one should always try to keep in mind if any elderly population individual like who is above 60 years of age presents to us in emergency and there is acute change in the clinical picture, we should always uh, keep our eyes and ears open with the thought that the person might be delirious, because a lot of times we uh, tend to be carried away by the thought that patients are affected with hyperactive delirium rather than the hypoactive delirium. So delirium is common in hospitals that needs to be evaluated and better care can be given to the elderly population. Similar is the problem with people with diabetes and substance use. Among them, diabetes and alcohol use problem is very common. So as a responsible clinician, we should always try to know about pattern of alcohol use from any of the clients who come up to our OPDs. Uh, there can be different patterns of alcohol use in our patients. It can be binge drinking pattern, alcohol abuse, or alcohol dependence. Just not giving pharmacological interventions is going to help these clients, because these clients also have multiple stages, because there are times when they lapse or they do relapse. So it is important for us to educate the clients who are already diabetics regarding the alcohol use, so they don't fall into the phase of complications. So similarly, like we know that diabetes and alcohol use can precipitate diabetic ketoacidosis, peripheral neuropathy, and retinopathy. And there are few medications like metformin, which is contraindicated in the patients who are already using alcohol with the fear of lactic acidosis. Smoking and diabetes itself uh, is a big indicator for people might suffer from heart attacks and strokes. So the next is psychotic disorders and diabetes. Uh, Similarly, like in neurotics, there is even higher risk in people with psychotic disorders who are diagnosed with diabetes, because at the onset of illness, a lot of times clinicians tend to forget the getting investigated the patient for baseline sugar levels or lipid profiles, and because of the metabolic side effects of few antipsychotics, there are times people come up with increased weight gain and metabolic syndrome, because these people have less of physical activity, they do have poor diet schedules and poor healthcare and treatment. So I've also included some list of antipsychotics and some antidepressants which uh, might trigger the weight gain in few patients. especially the use of olanzapine and clozapine has been seen to cause uh, metabolic syndrome. Similarly, the role of SSRIs and TCAs is also there is likelihood of increase in weight. So the best practice for a clinician is whenever we start such a antipsychotic, especially a second generation antipsychotic, that is olanzapine, risperidone, or a clozapine, a baseline sugar levels, lipid profile should be done, and it should be monitored at every 3 months or 6 months. So here we are coming at the end of the seminar. I'm just here to share this particular slide. Uh, like we know, I have been knowing for a long time that mental health and mental illnesses are stigmatized. So here we see that diabetes is also people who suffer from diabetes also feel that they are under some kind of stigma because they feel that they cannot share their problems of emotional turmoil with anyone and diabetic related stress. So it is definitely the responsibility of doctors and their teams who are managing such patients to give them the adequate time so that such kind of stigma can be removed and which can help in the better outcome of such patients. So with this is the last slide of the day, and this is our take-home message that diabetes and mental health requires a multidisciplinary approach, a patient-centric approach, effective communication, educating the patient and the family members should be of our utmost priority, and regularly or reviewing their diabetes management plans should be done so that we can discuss with our patients and we can educate them time to time. And if needed, timely referrals to mental health professionals, psychiatrists, or psychologists can be done for the better care of such patients. Thank you.
So
So,
I think we can have questions.
thank you, sir.
Okay, please.
There are no questions right now.
Hello. Sir, right now there are no questions in chat box. So can we
Okay.
wait for a couple of minutes?
Few seconds we can wait for. Few seconds. Or even the participants can unmute themselves and can ask questions also. Anybody wants to ask?
No
question, they can
question.
unmute themselves.
होगा नहीं तो अब तक आ जाता है 2-3
मैंने पूछा था ये भीड़ को आप उकसा रहे हैं कल हो गए भीड़ अगर नियंत्रण में नहीं रही तो कौन जिम्मेदार होगा आप कह रहे हैं कि हम लोग
I think we should wind up the session.
Yes, sir.
I thank Aman for a very nice, lucid talk. And many times psychiatry people, they use many terms, but you were so eloquent and know nicely you explained each and everything. We can have these things on more better platforms on higher setup also. So
Sure, sir.
I stop here, and I think
Thank you
we
for the
should-
opportunity, sir.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you,
So
sir. Okay,
yeah,
sir.
bye from my side.
Bye-bye, sir.
Okay, thank you all of you.
Thank you.
So I'm ending the meeting now.
Yeah, sure. Bye. Bye.
कहा था एक दिन जवान के लिए छोड़िए उन्होंने कहा नहीं हम